Welcome to Freedom Flicker, where we shine a light on truth, justice, and stories that matter. Today, we're diving into a topic that's gripping, emotional, and urgent: the Epstein survivors' fight for accountability. On September 3rd, 2025, dozens of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's horrific abuse gathered in Washington, D.C., to demand the release of all documents related to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's cases. But they're taking it a step further, announcing plans to compile their own independent list of Epstein's associates to seek justice. Why does this matter? Because it's about survivors reclaiming their power, exposing the truth, and ensuring no one escapes accountability. This is a story of courage, resilience, and a demand for transparency. So, stick with me for the next 30 minutes as we unpack this historic moment, the survivors' stories, and what it means for justice. Let's get started. For those new to this case, let's set the stage. Jeffrey Epstein was a financier and convicted sex offender who abused countless young girls and women over decades, from the mid-1990s until his arrest in 2019. Operating from his mansions in Florida, New York, and his private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Epstein lured vulnerable girls, some as young as 14, with promises of money or opportunity, only to subject them to horrific abuse. His accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, was convicted in 2021 for her role in recruiting and grooming victims and is serving a 20-year sentence. But here's the kicker: Epstein's wealth and connections to powerful figures, politicians, celebrities, and billionaires allowed him to evade justice for years. In 2006, he got a slap on the wrist with a secret plea deal in Florida, serving just 13 months in a cushy jail setup, thanks to then U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta. Fast forward to 2019, Epstein was arrested again on federal sex trafficking charges, but he died in his cell before trial. The official report says suicide, but skepticism persists, with some, like Epstein's brother and an independent pathologist, pointing to evidence suggesting murder. Since then, survivors and advocates have fought for the release of the so-called Epstein files, documents that could reveal who enabled or participated in his crimes. The Justice Department has released over 33,000 pages recently, but here's the catch: most of it was already public, leaving survivors and lawmakers frustrated. And the rumored client list? The DOJ says it doesn't exist, but survivors aren't buying it. They believe the truth is being buried to protect powerful people. On September 3rd, 2025, something historic happened on the steps of a U.S. Capitol. As many as 100 survivors of Epstein's abuse, alongside other sexual abuse survivors, joined forces with lawmakers from both parties: Republican Thomas Massie, Democrat Khanna, and even MAGA firebrand Marjorie Taylor Greene, for a rally and press conference. Their demand? Full transparency. They want every single document related to Epstein and Maxwell released, with victims' identities protected to prevent further trauma. Survivor Lisa Phillips, who hosts a podcast for abuse survivors, dropped a bombshell. "We know the names," she said. "Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know were regularly in the Epstein world." This independent list is a game changer. For years, survivors like Marina Lacerda, who was only 14 when Epstein abused her, and Annie Farmer, abused at 16, have spoken out about the powerful adults who enabled or ignored Epstein's crimes. They're not just talking about Epstein and Maxwell. They're pointing to a network of enablers, from house staff to high-profile associates. But here's the challenge: survivors are scared for their safety. Phillips clarified they may not make the list public due to fears of retaliation, but their message is clear: they're done waiting for the government to act. They want justice, and they're taking matters into their own hands. Let's take a moment to hear from the survivors themselves. Their courage is the heart of this story. Marina Lacerda, known as Minor Victim 1 in Epstein's 2019 case, spoke publicly for the first time at the rally. She was 14 when Epstein lured her into his world, forcing her to endure years of abuse and even recruit others. She told ABC News his house was a revolving door. There was always girls. Haley Robson, who was 16 when her abuse began, describe how Epstein pressured her to bring more girls from her high school. Anuska de Giorgio spoke of the terror of being threatened with severe consequences, including death if she spoke out. And Jess Michaels, raped by Epstein in 1991, said for years she thought she was alone, until she found strength with other survivors. These women live with trauma every day, flashbacks, anxiety, the fear of being outed. Yet they're standing up, demanding accountability not just for Epstein and Maxwell, but for everyone who looked the other way. They're also haunted by the possibility that videos of their abuse exist. As survivor, Jenalisa Jones told CNN, their pain is compounded by the government's failures, like the 2007 plea deal that let Epstein off easy, signed off by Alexander Acosta. Survivors like Teresa Helm call this re-abuse by the system, but their voices are growing louder, and their unity is unstoppable. The survivors' rally wasn't just a cry for justice. It's putting pressure on Congress and the Trump administration. Representatives Massie and Khanna are pushing a bill to force the Justice Department to release all Epstein files, needing just 5 more Republican signatures for a House vote. The House Oversight Committee dropped 33,000 pages of documents, but survivors and lawmakers like Democrat Jasmine Crockett say 97% of it was already public. They're accusing the Trump administration of hiding the truth. President Trump, who once promised to release the files during his 2024 campaign, now calls the case a Democrat hoax, frustrating even his allies like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's urged him to meet with survivors. Then there's Ghislaine Maxwell, recently moved to a minimum security prison after meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Maxwell's pushing for a pardon. Survivors like Anuska de Giorgio call this a nightmare, arguing it would mock their suffering. The Justice Department claimed that no client list exists has only fueled skepticism, with survivors and attorneys like Brad Edwards insisting transparency is the only way to stop conspiracy theories and protect victims. This fight is far from over. The Epstein survivors' fight for accountability is a testament to human resilience. These women, who've endured unimaginable pain, are standing together, compiling their own list and demanding the truth. They're not just fighting for themselves. They're fighting for every victim of abuse, for every child who deserves a safer future. At Freedom Flicker, we believe their voices must be heard. So what can you do? Share this video to spread awareness. Follow organizations like World Without Exploitation, which support survivors. And let your elected officials know you want transparency in the Epstein case. No more secrets, no more cover-ups. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. If you found this video impactful, hit that like button, subscribe,